The internet has changed the way we live. It has changed the way we work, the way we shop, and even the way we date. It has also changed the way we kill.
I'm Donald McIntyre, and I'm on a quest to explore the dark side of our online world, where one click can lead to murder.
The internet and social media has been a godsend to online predators. Why? Because of the speed in which they can, one, create fake profiles, but two, access victims.
I'll be investigating some of the most disturbing crimes in recent history, where the internet and social media have been used to trick, torture, and kill innocent victims, lured into a virtual world where nothing is as it seems.
Clearly, she did not realise the person she was talking to online was the man who was going to kill her.
In this programme, when Clare Wood met George Appleton on an internet dating site, she thought she'd found her dream man. But Appleton had a violent side, and after nearly 2 years together, he strangled her to death.
Why did George Appleton threaten and stalk Clare once she broke off their relationship? What was the trigger that moved his violent threats into violent action? We've all seen the news stories of starstruck fans harassing their idols. But stalking isn't just the preserve of the rich and famous. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men will experience some form of stalking throughout their lives. And it's on the increase, up 30% in the last year. In this online world, an unsuspecting victim can be stalked with simply a click of a button. 36-year-old single mother Clare Wood was first contacted by 40-year-old George Appleton through an internet dating site. Their relationship blossomed, first online and then in person. But when Clare discovered Appleton was also seeing other women, she tried to end it. Appleton refused to accept the relationship was over and began harassing her. He terrorised Clare, causing criminal damage to her home, threatening her with an iron, and even telling her he'd have her stabbed. Tragically for Clare, on February 2nd, 2009, his threats would come to a violent head. I'm on my way to Salford, where Clare Wood lived and where she died. And I want to find out why she went looking for love online and what she did when she realised she'd fallen for the wrong man, and how she could have been saved from her brutal end. Clare Wood was a kind, gentle woman who saw the good in everyone she met. Her parents separated when she was very young, but she became extremely close to her mother's new husband, Michael. So much so that when she was 15 years old, she asked him to officially adopt her as his daughter.
I was reduced to mush, if the truth were known. I thought, oh, I had a lump in my throat, and I thought, oh, God. I was tickled to death. We were very close as a family, and she wasn't short of pals. She was very popular. She was a bonny kid. And I was very proud of her. Clare had many male admirers, and it wasn't long before she fell in love and married a man called Justin Wood in 1999. I thought Justin was a topper. I really did. That same year, Clare gave birth to a baby daughter. Everything seemed to be going well for her. But then, in her early 30s, Clare began to suffer from what was later diagnosed as bipolar disorder. She gained weight
and became increasingly frustrated by the way she looked and felt.
Clare had gone from a gorgeous figure as a teenager to starting to balloon. And I have a sneaky feeling Clare knew 4 or 5 years that she was bipolar. But that was as much as I can tell you about bipolar. When we saw her, 9 times out of 10, she was in the up. She never brought her troubles to the door. She was always pleasant, always upbeat when we saw her.
But in private, Clare's bipolar disorder was taking its toll.
Her marriage at home was not going well, and in April 2004, she separated from her husband. She left the family home, and reluctantly, she left him to bring up their only daughter.
About a year later, Clare's mother died of cancer.
She didn't get on with her real father, and as I say, it made an awful hole in Clare's life.
In early 2005, she decided to make a fresh start.
Clare settled into a new flat in Salford, not too far away from here. With a formal diagnosis of bipolar disorder, she also was on the correct medication to control her condition and was looking forward to a bright future which she could control.
Clare used to use Facebook quite a lot. That was her sort of channel of sort of socialising. She got to the point where she wanted to meet somebody, and online dating, as many of us know, is a way of doing that.
She was still concerned about her weight and was socialising online rather than face-to-face. But she did sign up to several dating sites where she described herself as a talkative, affectionate woman looking for someone relatively sane in my area. She said she wanted a serious relationship with a respectful man who liked the larger lady.
I think Clare was looking for a loving relationship. It's what she wanted more than anything. And sometimes it's very difficult to meet people physically. So online conversations are a really good way, when you don't have a lot of confidence, to spark up those conversations and get to know somebody first and let them get to know you.
In April 2007, Clare met a man who seemed to be a charming and chatty character through one of her dating profiles. George Appleton was 40 years of age and lived near to Clare. A former fairground worker, he was outgoing and had the gift of the gab.
He had certain traits that he'd use to entice women. You know, he was confident, he complimented women, he lured them in that way, made them feel good about themselves.
Within a matter of weeks, Appleton had won Clare over. As well as spending time at her house, they would chat for hours online, declaring their love for each other.
It developed quite quickly, actually. They were Facebook friends, and then they met. They met up, and for a while, things were great. You know, Clare felt like she'd met somebody who was, you know, sort of putting her on a pedestal and making her feel special and treating her the way that any woman would want to be treated.
But Appleton was a man with a past. A few years earlier, he'd been convicted of harassing and assaulting 2 former partners and given a custodial sentence. It seems Clare's new boyfriend had a dark side. Clare Wood was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend, George Appleton, in February 2009. The couple had met 2 years earlier online, and they quickly started an intense relationship.
Clare brought her new man to meet her father, and she told him how happy Appleton made her feel, how caring he was, and how she was delighted at getting her life back on track. Her dad was naturally pleased that she was happy, but being an experienced prison officer, he could smell a bad one from a mile off. And despite all Clare's compliments about Appleton, he still had serious misgivings about him.
When Appleton turned up at my house, he was somewhat scruffy, balding, unshaved, greasy top, jeans and trainers that had seen a better day. I gave him the look and I thought, well, this is what my daughter's settling for. She's certainly started at the bottom of the heap.
Any dad's going to have that protective nature over the daughter when they start out in a relationship. It doesn't matter how old they are, they're always going to feel like that. But there was something that just didn't ring quite right with Michael.
I always give somebody the benefit of the doubt, but I never did with Appleton. There was something about the aura of the man, there was something about the way he looked and the way he acted. There was something that made me suspicious straight away.
Michael voiced his concerns about Appleton to Clare and told her he didn't want her bringing him around again. But to his astonishment, Clare told him she was very much in love with Appleton. So much so that she was going to marry him.
I was appalled. I said to her, you marry him, and I says, it'll put a serious dent in our relationship. Mark my words, I says, I won't be coming to any wedding.
Clare's dad was right to be concerned, and she was soon to discover for herself that Appleton wasn't the respectable, committed guy she was hoping for.
It seems that Clare is very happy for this relationship to move on quickly. And in her head, this is an exclusive relationship. They're both completely in love. They've found each other through the internet.
But after several months of that happy new relationship time, things did start to turn sour. Clare started to suspect that he was seeing other people, and she actually found out that he was seeing other people online.
Who's this? You got a message from a Sam?
Yeah, he's a mate.
On the website?
Website?
On the dating website that we met on.
When she eventually confronted him about it, he admitted to having 4 other sexual relationships with other women while he was with Clare.
This is a girl. What are you doing tonight? Can't wait to see you again.
That would have burst her bubble immediately because the whole thing would have crashed around her, and she would have probably at that point been able to see that he wasn't truthful and this probably wasn't love.
When Clare confronted Appleton about his infidelities, he quickly turned nasty and a violent row erupted. It was a sign of things to come.
Shut up! You don't say a thing! You don't ever read my phone ever again! You understand?
Clare was left terrified. She resolved to end the relationship.
From her home here in Salford, she wrote this heartfelt letter, begging him to leave her alone.
It says, Dear George, there's no easy way to say this, but I don't want to be with you anymore. Too much has happened, and I can't ever trust you, no matter what you do. You still scare me, and I can't be with somebody I'm frightened of. Don't use this as an excuse to go off the rails. Take care, I mean it. Clare.
It's that placatory kind of language. I don't want to wind you up. I don't want to push your buttons. Please, 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 let's just end it. You know, I'm being nice about this. Can we do this nicely?
She was frightened of him. She was frightened for the safety of her daughter, and told him in as many words she'd be delighted if he'd stayed away, and apparently that must have fallen on deaf ears.
To say that Appleton took the breakup of the relationship badly would be a massive understatement.
You're gonna regret that, you bitch. You whore, you're gonna regret that.
He started stalking her online, sending her vile and frightening messages. He also came to her house here in Salford and hurled a flurry of verbal insults towards her, threatened to damage her property and to physically hurt her.
Let me in! Come on! Open the door! I can see you!
Appleton flipped. He couldn't take no for an answer. He couldn't take it that Clare was standing up to him. He was the one that called the shots in the relationship. He was the one who had that control. And then all of a sudden, Claire's bravely stood up to him and told him she doesn't want to be with him anymore. And that's where it started to turn violent. He would turn up at the house, he'd be banging on the door, he'd actually bash the door in. He made threats to have her stabbed. He made threats to burn the house down.
It wasn't long before Appleton followed through on his threats. He came round to Clare's house and punched his fist through her door and made even more threats.
You know what I'm gonna do with this? I'm gonna brand your face, do you understand? You do not break up with me! Bitch! Honestly.
Clare came here to Pendleton Police Station to make a report about Appleton's behaviour and also to make them aware about his previous convictions for harassing women.
After Claire first made the allegations to police that she was being harassed by Appleton, it became a constant thing. It was a daily occurrence.
He'd threatened to set her house on fire to the state that the police put a stopper on her letterbox to stop petrol being poured through the letterbox, and also put a panic alarm in her bedroom.
And Appleton wasn't done yet. The very next day, he arrived at Clare's house and battered on her door for hours.
He's been banging on my door all morning. I'm so scared.
Too frightened to answer, she called the police and they arrived to see her later that day.
Appleton was arrested and a restraining order was put in place against him.
With support now in place from the police and the local domestic violence unit, and with the Appleton banned from making any contact with her and even from entering her street here, she was now in a great position to leave this abusive relationship in the past.
Well, obviously, I was delighted that Clare was happy. There was no need for me to be concerned. The weight was falling off her. She was giving clothes to the lady next door as she slimmed down. And everything was on the up.
But unbelievably, despite having managed to free herself from her abusive relationship, and with things starting to look up for Clare, she went back to seeing Appleton.
When you actually look at the issue of domestic abuse, it's shocking to see how trapped a victim can feel. And it is quite easy for people to point the finger at the victim, for people who don't understand domestic abuse.
Tragically, a phrase we do still hear is, well, why didn't she just leave that abusive relationship? And, you know, we should be spinning it on its head. We should be asking the question, actually, why don't perpetrators of domestic abuse stop assaulting and being violent towards their partners?
Appleton would have used lots of methods to try and regain Clare's trust and love and to get back in that relationship and have control.
Maybe he'd groomed her to a certain extent, and if he had isolated her from other friends and family, who else could she potentially turn to?
I'm not shocked that Clare went back to him at all.
Clare chose to reconnect with her abusive ex, even though she already knew he'd been convicted of harassing a former partner and had received a custodial sentence. Why didn't she see the warning signs?
I'm meeting criminologist Dr. Elizabeth Yardley and psychologist Mike Berry to gain more of an insight into what was going through Clare's mind.
Why did Clare go back to Appleton after he'd made so many threats?
Well, this is something that doesn't appear to make a lot of sense to us if we're just looking at this in isolation. But what we always need to do is see it in the context of the controlling relationship that this was. So Appleton's somebody who can be very charming, he can be very nice, very kind of knight in shining armour type character. And he knows what buttons to push. He knows how to get Clare to do what he wants. So it's somebody who has got such a degree of control over her. It's his behaviour that's problematic here. It's not hers.
He can charm the birds off the trees, and that's part of the game. She is seduced by him physically and, more importantly, psychologically. So he can do what he wants with her. And she's desperately lonely. And isn't this better than nothing?
But he's beyond, I mean, his behaviour is so extreme. You know, on one level he's incredibly charming, and then he's extremely controlling to the point of never letting practically her out of his sight.
Yeah, he wants to be the one who makes all of the decisions and be in complete control of her. So he's got her exactly where he wants her. And things are only going to get worse because the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. This is not a man who is going to change overnight.
I've come to Salford, Greater Manchester, where in 2009, Clare Wood was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, George Appleton. Their relationship had started 2 years earlier after the couple met online. When things turned sour and Clare tried to end it, Appleton began a campaign of vicious harassment, both on social media and in person, making her life a misery.
Clare reported Appleton to the police on numerous occasions, and in October 2008, he was arrested and bailed on condition that he didn't contact Clare nor enter her street.
But shockingly, despite everything that happened, Clare decided to return to her abusive boyfriend after less than a month apart.
There is often mixed messages in domestic abusive situations. Thus, by going back to Appleton, Clare is seeming, at least, to be undermining her relationship with the police. She is compromising her credibility with the legal system.
Obviously, the police thought this girl's not in any great danger. She's taken him back. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why.
After they got back together, Clare wrote a letter to the police telling them that she no longer thought Appleton posed a threat. She wrote, "After much thinking in a calmer state of mind, I was wondering if there might be a way of stopping the charges. Given the violence Appleton had shown towards her previously, I can't help but wonder why she would have done this."
Appleton would have been very much playing himself as the victim. And he would have been also saying things like, you know, I've changed, I've done this, I've stopped taking cannabis for you, I can be very different. And it's not that she actually believed that he could be different, because I don't think she did. But I do think she started to feel sorry for him. And I do think, being the kind of person that she was, she wanted the best way out for absolutely everyone. She didn't want any trouble from him or for her or her family. And that was a way of saying, okay, I'll go to the police and I will tell them that you're okay. I'll save you from this.
Knowing what the relationship between Appleton and Clare was, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that actually the letter that was written into the police by Clare asking for George not to receive a custodial sentence may have been orchestrated and manufactured by Appleton. Clearly, did officers recognise that? I think they took it on face value, and it may well have been something that had been orchestrated by Appleton.
Appleton attended a bail hearing at Swinton to discuss the restrictions placed on him contacting Clare and entering the street here where she lived. Given the letter that she wrote on his behalf, claiming that he no longer posed a risk to her, the court amended his conditions, allowing him to enter the street to meet some friends he had there, but still forbidding him from contacting Clare directly.
As far as the police were concerned, Appleton was still prohibited from making contact with Clare. But despite that ruling, it seems they were still secretly seeing each other. And 2 weeks later, Clare went to Appleton's flat for an amicable visit. But it soon turned violent. The next day, Clare called the police to report that he had attempted to rape her. Appleton was clearly worried, that Clare might phone the police because he also called them to find out if a complaint had been made against him. He may have been trying to cast doubt over Clare's allegations.
He's looking for confirmation that she is going against him, that, you know, she's not being loyal to him. And, you know, the proof of that in saying, yes, there have been complaints, would have made him quite angry, I would imagine. But also in presenting himself to the police, he's almost saying as well, it's her, it's not me, I'm just trying to protect myself.
It was almost as if to get his word in first, and it further illustrates his very controlling behaviour. Not only did he seek to control Clare, he attempted potentially to control the police.
In the early hours of January 19th, Appleton was arrested at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, but he denied the charge of sexual assault and was bailed till April with no charges pending. The police said there was insufficient evidence to charge him.
Although no charges had been brought against him, Appleton was still legally barred from making any kind of contact with Clare. And it seems, as far as Clare was concerned, their relationship was well and truly over. But that doesn't seem to have fazed him one bit.
Over the next 2 days, in an apparent act of defiance, Appleton flouted his bail conditions and contacted Clare online.
She got messages from him and, you know, she reported these to police and said he's still contacting me on Facebook.
So Facebook has this ability to poke somebody. It's just, you click a button and it says, oh, I'll give you a poke. It's like, hi, I'm giving you a hello. So Appleton not only sends her a poke, he sends her a series of invites. It's this constant contact, but not a real contact.
For us, that might be fairly insignificant, but for Clare, it's huge. It's George in her life, in her world, in that world of social media.
The police considered this a minor breach of the bail conditions, but it's not the severity of the act, it's the fact that they intentionally breached those bail conditions.
They don't recognize it's a pattern of behavior. They don't see it as a continuation of the abuse. They just see it as an annoying gesture. It's not an annoying gesture, it's a stalker saying to its victim, I'm here, you can't get rid of me. And that's exactly how the victim feels. But the police don't recognize her, or they ignore that, or they don't understand the significance of that type of behavior.
George Appleton's use of social media during that particular period was just an extension of power and control. I've got control, I know where you are, I can reach you, metaphorically, at any time.
At the end of January, Clare was interviewed by police in relation to her sexual assault allegation against Appleton. She admitted that at the time of the alleged assault, she was seeing Appleton willingly. And suddenly, the police's attitude to her case seemed to change.
No one put all those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together to try and understand and appreciate the risk that faced Clare at that particular moment in time.
The police are very good at investigating crime, a car theft, or a break-in. And there's not much psychology behind a car theft or a break-in. So when they go to investigate things like stalking and domestic violence, they kind of discount the psychology behind the abuser and the impact on the victim.
At the end of January 2009, with the sexual assault charges dropped, Appleton was allowed to walk free without any restrictions on contacting Clare.
On February 2nd, 2009, this case would reach its tragic and horrifying conclusion. Late that afternoon, Appleton made his way over here to Clare's house while she was out. He had murder in mind, and nothing would stand in his way.
Police think Appleton entered Clare's address using his own key. And once inside, he lay in wait. When Clare arrived home in the late afternoon, Appleton pounced. It's believed he rapidly overpowered her and dragged her upstairs, where he raped her. Once he'd finished raping Clare, Appleton then strangled her to death.
Appleton would have wanted Clare to suffer. He would have wanted her to know that he was the one with all the power, and this is how I'm exerting it, and there's nothing you can do. He would never have wanted it to be quick.
It was a horrific murder, but Appleton wasn't finished yet.
He then set fire to her body, probably in a very clumsy forensic attempt to cover up evidence, because Appleton was trying to cast doubt on the idea that he had actually killed Clare.
You can't comprehend how evil somebody can be to do that. This isn't just taking somebody's life, it's completely stripping any existence away of Clare.
It was a truly vicious and brutal killing by Appleton. He chose not only to rape and strangle Clare to death, but also to set her body alight. I want to find out what psychologist Mike Berry and criminologist Dr. Elizabeth Yardley think drove him to kill the woman who loved him.
Mike, Appleton beat Clare. He raped her, strangled her, and then burnt her body. Why such extreme violence?
Because he was extremely angry. This is the action of a man who's so angry that he's got to destroy the object that makes him angry. In this case, it was poor Clare. Not only did he kill her, he had to destroy her and burn her and try and wipe her off this earth. This is an act of a very, very angry, very dangerous man.
When we look at his post-defence behaviour here, he's not only raped her and strangled her, but he set alight to her body. And I think that's quite symbolic. It's saying, look, I can't control you by keeping you in a relationship, so I'm going to control you by completely obliterating you.
I mean, there must have been some sense. I mean, he placed an ashtray beside the body. Was he trying to give us a hint that she burnt herself? It was her fault?
No, I don't. I think we may be reading too much into something. This does happen in crimes, that people do things for no obvious reason at all, and then we often put too much significance on it.
His key objective is to destroy her, to obliterate her, to make her vanish off the face of the earth by burning the body.
When George Appleton's girlfriend, Clare Wood, ended their 18-month relationship, he started to stalk her online and face-to-face, threatening to beat and to rape her. And on February 2nd, 2009, that's exactly what he did. Not only did he rape her, but he also strangled her before setting her body alight.
When Clare's family stopped hearing from her after February 2nd, they soon became worried and tried calling her. It was totally out of character for Clare not to get in touch. But Clare's dad, Michael, lived nearly 50 miles away, so couldn't drop in to check on her.
I said to my son, text Clare, tell her we haven't heard from her, tell her ask her if she's okay, and to get in touch. We got no reply, so I phoned my ex-son-in-law and said, would you do me a favour, Justin? We haven't heard from Clare. I said, will you go in past and see she's all right and tell her to get her bum into gear and get me a phone. Well, little did I know I was sending him into Bedlam.
Clare!
As soon as Clare's ex-husband arrived at the house, he saw the back door was unlocked and realised something was wrong. It didn't take long for his worst fears to be confirmed.
The police immediately launched a major manhunt for the prime suspect, Appleton. After all, Clare had reported him for threats and harassment on numerous occasions before.
The manhunt for George Appleton was nationwide. It had gone from Salford to across the country. Ports were put on alert, airports were put on alert, everyone was on alert for George Appleton, a dangerous individual that shouldn't be approached. And the police were going to use every avenue that they could to get that message across.
As the manhunt got underway, the police soon realised they'd completely underestimated Appleton's capacity for violence. Interviews with his friends revealed that he told them about the cruel and violent things he wanted to do to Clare. The police also discovered that Clare wasn't the only woman he had targeted on social media sites. The press soon dubbed him the Facebook Fugitive.
There were Facebook groups that were springing up to find George Appleton and make it easy for him to get in touch with police and spread that word, use social media to spread that word.
George, if you're listening to this, if you've accessed the website, I'd urge you to make contact with the police. If you don't feel confident in doing that, can I ask that you contact your solicitor?
But despite the huge publicity the case was generating in the news and on social media, Appleton still managed to evade the police for almost a week.
I think Appleton, while he was on the run, bit by bit, he will have realised that there was a manhunt, that he was wanted, that his attempts to cover things up were just not going to work. He knew that he was probably facing a long time in prison.
6 days after Clare's body was discovered, Appleton was found here at this rundown pub in Manchester. He was dead. He'd hung himself, but he left no suicide note or passed on any message of remorse.
As with many psychopathic individuals who are cornered, they take the option of controlling their own destiny, of wresting that last bit of control. Committing suicide for someone who's psychopathic isn't really that difficult because they have same kind of disregard for their own life as they do for others.
I thought you've cheated us. That was a man, it hurt me. More than I can describe. It's not just a Father's Day card or a birthday bloody card or Christmas card. He torn one of my family up.
After the discovery of Appleton's body here at this derelict pub, the full graphic details of his criminal record and his violent past towards women was revealed in public. For the very first time, Clare's dad knew the full truth about the man who dated and then murdered his daughter. He was shocked and appalled that himself and Clare didn't find out the truth about his violent past until it was too late, and he was determined never to let anybody else suffer the same fate again.
My daughter didn't get the protection that she deserved. The fact that there was 120 women being killed every year and possibly 5 to 6 men. Why, in this country, at least 1 in 4 women suffer domestic violence of some sort. And I didn't want another parent to go through what I went through.
Michael worked with politicians and the police to put a legal framework in place for victims of domestic abuse and their families to find out about their partner's previous convictions. Following a 3-year campaign and a pilot scheme across 4 counties, Clare's Law was launched nationwide.
Now with Clare's Law, there is a facility for an individual to make inquiries about the previous history of their partner. Looking back in Clare's particular case, absolutely Clare would have been empowered to make that application. She could have spoken to a police officer, gone into a police station and initiated a right to ask. It would have been heard by a decision-making forum, and then provided certain criteria were met, absolutely Clare could have been given information about Appleton's previous offending history.
It was a bittersweet moment. I wouldn't have been in any of this had George Appleton understood no. I couldn't do anything for Clare. I still can't. They could have called it any bloody law they liked, as long as they brought it in.
George Appleton was a sadistic human being, using the internet to coerce Clare into an abusive relationship before brutally murdering her. What kind of social media killer do Dr. Elizabeth Yardley and psychologist Mike Berry think Appleton was?
If we're going to build a map of murderers like Appleton and try and prevent them from going on to kill, how important is it to categorise them?
Well, it's really important because as criminologists, we need to understand what predators like him are doing with social media. And that's the term that I would use to describe him. He is a predator. So these online dating sites, these apps, they are his hunting ground, and vulnerable women looking for love were his prey. So he's using it to identify his victims. But he's also using it later on in the relationship. He's using it to stalk them. He is poking them, saying, look, I'm here, I'm watching you. So it's a really important tool in his toolbox.
From a psychologist's point of view, we have a predator. He has clearly targeted and groomed his victims, but then he's moved on to becoming a resentful stalker who is then gone into violence. We know that resentful stalkers are much more likely to become violent than other types of stalkers, but he has gone too far.
Liz, what surprises you about this case?
Well, I think that the thing that surprises me most about this case, that doesn't surprise me at the same time, is this victim blaming that goes on in reaction to Clare. Why did she have him back? Why did she go round to his flat? Why did she have consensual sex with him? We're so focused on the behaviour of the victim that we lose sight of the offender. The offender becomes kind of invisible.
And the offender is fought here. He's the one that's gone out to do this, and the victim has been taken advantage of.
How important in this online world is the need for a law like Clare's law?
Well, it's a really important milestone because in the age of the internet, often the relationships that we might strike up with people on dating apps or dating websites are people that we don't know in our social circles. They're people that we don't have information about to begin with. So we do need something to enable us to have that knowledge. It's not just the person who's getting into a relationship who can go and request a disclosure from the police. It's anybody who's concerned about that relationship. So it can be a friend, it can be a colleague, it can be a member of the family. So if you've seen those warning signs, you can go in and you can ask for this. So it's not just the person in the relationship.
Michael is immensely proud of the work he did to ensure Clare's law was passed. But sadly, it was too late to save his own daughter.
It's gratifying to know that what we did for the last 6 years has brought fruit. But not at the cost of my daughter. No. Whether Clare was in heaven saying I'm proud of you or not, it wasn't worth it. It'll help others, but it certainly didn't help me. I can't get that off. Clare's going to haunt me to the grave. Just, it's the way life is.